Hey everyone, while we were waiting for the beginning of Season 4, I thought we could go back and look at one of the big cues from Season 3. Break it down a little, show you what went on behind making it. First off, I apologize for the kind of bleh audio quality. I tried to set up the routing in my rig so you could get the direct audio into this video, but that didn't really work, so I just set up a microphone right next to my desk, so you're just going to be getting a microphone feed. So it's not the best, but I think you'll get a decent idea of what's going on. So as you can see, we're going to look at part of the action scene from Conquer, where Star finally fights Meteora. And I'll stop talking. I'll just show you the chunk that we're going to talk about, and then we'll get into it. Here we go. Alright, so that's about as far as we're going to go. I don't want to take up too much of your time. So let's just go through and start building this cue from the bottom up so you can see the sounds that are there. So let's open that up. So let's look at the bass line for this first. Here you go. So you can hear a little bit of a delay going off on that. I sort of like that when you end the bass line, there's still a little bit of a trickle out, so it doesn't feel so sudden when the bass line stops. Anyway, this is a sort of repeated buzzy bass line that I use a lot on this show. I mentioned before that I really like the pop artist Robin, and I love a lot of her tracks have this like really thumpy bass line that's just like really pushing you forward, and so I kind of modeled this bass line a little bit after that. So then why don't we just put right on top of that the main drums. So we have a patch there, and then all the way at the bottom we have a patch here that is basically just doubling it, making it sound a little bit bigger. I'll play the first patch alone first. So you hear that gung, 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 gung kind of sound. And then we are just going to add this patch right here on top of it to make it just a little bit smackier. I don't know if you can hear that on your end, but that adds just a little bit more high-end punch to it. And then we're going to start building the backing track before we get to the melody. Now, the main backing stuff here is strings. We don't use strings a lot on this show, but I think for the big, really impactful sequences, it adds a lot of depth to the sound. So I think these are the main strings that I'm working with here. Yes, they are. Here we go. And you can kind of hear the strings already outlining the melody a little bit. Da 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 da. So there's a sort of pulsing rhythm there, but the top end of it is already telling you what the melody is going to be. And I use a couple of synths to outline that melody here. But that wasn't quite enough, so I add a little bit of violins to it just to give it a little bit of space behind it. I'll play that violin line for you now. So when you combine that violin with the synths, now, as the battle kind of gets into full swing here, I switch the melodies around a little bit, and we are going to break that down once again, piece by piece. The big thing is the melody line, which, let's play that. I think it is in the same place. It is in the same place. Here we go. I add a patch that we normally use for Stars themes here as well. You can hear this. All together, kind of sounds like this. So that's what that sounds like. Now, if you're familiar with some other stuff that I've put on this Tumblr before, you'll notice that that is actually a variation on the theme that we introduced for Star in the very first episode of the show, which I just tried to play, and it did not work. So let's try that one more time. So that's a little snippet that we introduced in the pilot, and that now we have it with those synths. Let me play that for you one more time, just so you can hear that. So just sort of like a little thing for the people who pay attention to that stuff. It's sort of buried into the action cue a bit, and you might not hear if you're not paying attention, but it's there. And there's sort of a neat piano line going on underneath all of this, which is also pretty buried, but I think goes a long way in making this feel very anime, which is something we try to do on the show a lot. Here it comes. So like a really bright, really big grand piano, and then when you put that with the strings, there's just something about that sound with a big string section and like a really dramatic piano that really strikes me as very Japanese, and so I think that works pretty well here. So we're gonna play that whole section for you just so you can hear it all together. So here, around measure 68, I do something that I kind of do a lot on this show, which is I change the pace of the drum beat. With these really long action sequences, you can't really go at 100% the entire time. So in the beginning of the action sequence, I go at full speed, full volume, just to really give you the impact of what the sequence is going to be. And then here for this section, because this is sort of a reset button, there's a whole the look of the scene changes, Star's sort of method of attack changes. I kind of cut the beat in half. So before it kind of sounded like this sounds like. Fewer accents. The big snare hits are kind of spread out at double the length that they would have been in the previous section. So that's the big change for this section right here. And then listen to that back with everything once again. I do add a hat to make it a little more exciting, because if without it, it kind of sounds like this. That's still pretty exciting, but I just wanted to push the pace, so there's sort of two things going on. I cut the main beat in half while adding a really fast hi-hat, so there's kind of a push and pull thing going on here. finally, for this section right here, just wanted to point out one cool thing. Two cool things, actually. So I just wanted this section to feel very chaotic, because it kind of looks like Star is beginning to lose here. She's getting thrown around. She's getting thrown around like a rag doll. She doesn't really know what's happening. We don't really know what's happening. I wanted a synth patch that was really chaotic and all over the place. And this is actually a preset from Omnisphere that I just opened up and sounded really great. So I didn't change it very much. I just put it in some neat chords. If you want to look at what those chords look like there. They're on a nice delay, as you can hear. So when I change chords, part of the previous chord is still playing. Gives a little bit of dissonance. Sounds kind of neat. And then that leads into this big moment. Big moment where we see Jelly Bean Hallucination. Also a callback from the very first episode of the show. My first pass of the cue, when that came, I hit it with this. Which is the same guitar lick that hits in the pilot of the show, but we felt like that maybe pulled you out of the scene a little bit. I'll play what it sounded like with that all in there. Maybe a little too funny for something that was so dramatic, so instead of doing it on the guitar, I do it on a buzzy synth with a lot of portamento to give it a little bit of slide. So we get kind of a sense of that callback. The synth is playing the same lick, it's just not on that kind of mildly loopy guitar that it was on before. So now that you know all that stuff going in, let's watch the scene through one more time, see if you can hear that stuff as we go along. And yeah, that'll do it for me. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. Hope you enjoy the cue. Here we go. Thanks, guys.